Okay, we're going to show you how to wire a solar cup boat, and we're going to start off by showing you the high current wiring system first, which you can see in bold here, goes all the way around. And we're going to show you first how to measure each of these wires. So let's go back to the boat and take a look. We're using 4-gauge wire for our heavy high current system. And to measure the length of these, you'll need to position all of your devices first. For instance, the motor, the solenoid, the motor controller, and the main fuse. We're going to take a tape and measure from each junction and write all of these down, and then go to a welding shop. They're real nice to work with. You can get the cables cut to the right length after you measure them, and they'll even put the lugs on for you, and then you can slide on the shrink tape and make it secure. So first we're going to start putting on this first wire. Chuck, you want to take over on that?
Okay. Okay, so the first wire we're going to put on is the wire that goes from the solenoid over here to the bracket that we put together here for the main fuse. So we've labeled the solenoid 1 and 2 here to match the terminals on the schematic. So the first thing we're going to do is put the cable on there, put a washer, put a lock washer, and then tighten that nut down just finger tight on there. Alright, thanks Woody. And we're going to bring the other end of the same cable over, and we're going to put it on the bolt here that goes to the top connection for the fuse. We have our 250 amp fuse here. Depending on the circuit that you build, you might have a 300 amp or a 350 amp fuse. These fuses come with the controllers when you buy them from Alltrax, but keep in mind that you might have to change it somewhere along the line if you're going to use a different circuit. So we're going to put that on there. We already have a lock washer on the back. We're going to put... We need a regular washer that I don't see. Okay, I have one right here. And then we're going to put the lock washer on there and tighten this bolt down just finger tight. Okay, so that's the first wire.
So far we've just put this one wire on from the solenoid over to the main fuse, and now we're going to go to the other side of the fuse and hook up the wire to the master switch on position A.
Okay, second wire we're going to put on is the one that goes from the 250 or 350 amp fuse up to our master AV switch. We've drilled a hole in the bulkhead here to put the wires through, and we have our AV switch here, one of these Cole Hershey switches. You don't have to use this kind, but it's the kind that most teams use. You notice it says we have 1 and 2 here, positions 1 and 2. On the schematic it says A and B. We've also labeled them A and B here. Some of these switches, if you don't buy a Cole Hershey, will say A and B on them, so we kind of put 1 in A and 2 in B here to keep it straight, and then it'll give you some indication on the back of which one is 1 and which one is 2. And we've also labeled them on the back here 1 and 2. So we're going to go ahead and put this wire through the hole here, and we're going to hook it onto the bottom of the fuse. There's already a washer on there. We're going to stick another washer on the front. We're going to put a lock washer on there, and then we'll just finger tighten down that wire there. Okay, now this wire comes over to position number 1 or A on our switch here, so we're just going to stick that in there. Woody has a lock washer and a nut, and we're going to go ahead and just hand tighten that down also. Okay, all right, Woody. The next wire then is the wire that comes from the common, where it says A plus B or both on the AB switch here, which is the one here on the AB switches on the bottom. It says common. So we're going to take that wire and we're going to hook that. That goes to our battery. But for right now, we're going to hook it onto this end of the switch here the same way. We're going to put a lock washer on there. and put the nut on there. All right, very good. Now on this boat in particular, this switch, the wires come out this big gap here in the bottom, so you can get those coming out side by side, and then it's bolted on right here.
Okay, what we just did was put the wire from the fuse over to the A position on the master switch, and then we put the other wire from the common point on the master switch through the hole, which will eventually hook onto the battery.
Lastly, we'll introduce the wire for the solar panel, which will be the last wire connected to B.
And then we'll attach the master switch to the hull.
Okay, the next wire we're going to put on is the one that comes, the last wire that goes onto the AB switch here is the one that comes from our solar charge controller here. So we have a wire that comes from the battery plus of the solar charge controller through a 20 amp fuse here, and then we're going to wire it up to the switch here. So we're going to put it through our hole here. And then we're going to put it on our position 2 or B side of the Cole-Hersey switch. Tighten it down. Very good. And then we're just going to go ahead and connect it temporarily here to the side of the boat here. Why don't you go ahead, Woody? There's screws right there. I'll hold it in place. All right, very good.
Okay, now that we have the master switch in place and we've attached that to the boat, we're going to now connect the common wire coming out of the master switch to the battery positive side, and then that positive battery side will then connect to the other battery with a jumper cable, but we're not going to connect that now because then everything will go live. We want to hold that off till the end. And then we'll connect the other wire from the other battery over to the shunt.
This is our common wire coming out from our Cole-Hersey switch that we put in just a minute ago. So we're going to connect it to the positive terminal of this battery right here. We have the batteries arranged so that it's very easy to wire them in series. The plus is right here. The minus of this one here is the plus one is here. We're going to jumper these across at the very end of the process to connect the circuit. Woody has the cable that's going to connect it there. We're going to leave it in the hole for right now. And then we're going to connect the minus end of the battery up to our shunt. So we're just going to hook this cable on right now. It's pretty easy. Put a washer, put a lock washer, put that on there. I would also like to say while I'm doing this that one of the worst things you can do to a battery is to store it away when it's uncharged. So when you take these batteries out of your boat, when you get back from Lake Skinner after the races, you need to charge these batteries. And if you charge them, these Odyssey batteries, they will last till next season. You don't have to do anything to them. They're very durable. If you don't have these orange top batteries here, you might want to pull them out at Christmas time or something and recharge them, make sure that they're topped off. Because if you don't do that, if you leave them discharged after the races and just throw them in the garage and wait for next race season, those batteries will be shot. So do yourself a favor and charge the batteries. So at any rate, we're not going to put this jumper wire on here next. The next one we're going to put on is, Woody, you want to go ahead and just connect that. We have our shunt over here, and we have the minus end of the battery right here. So just go ahead and connect that wire right up.
Chuck has just connected the heavy wiring from the negative terminal of the battery to the shunt. You also see on the diagram that there are 2 voltmeters here. The first voltmeter, just like this, measures the voltage across the battery, and that's useful in terms of strategizing for the endurance event. And the second voltmeter measures the voltage across the shunt, which can be equated to the current flowing through the high current wiring by just using Ohm's law. But both of these voltmeters are optional, they are not essential.
Okay, now we're going to connect another high current wire from the other side of the shunt over to the B- position on the all-tracks controller.
Okay, the next wire is the one that goes from the bottom side of the shunt over to the B- on the controller. So we're going to go ahead and just put it into the shunt here. We have a lock washer on the top, and we will finger tighten that down. And then we're going to take it and put it through this bolt, put it through the bottom of the B-, and Adrian has the nut there. And we'll just finger tighten that down because we're going to be putting another wire on there in a few minutes.
Now we're going to put the M- onto the motor.
Okay, the next wire goes from the minus of our motor over to the minus on the all-tracks controller. Most of the motors do not have a plus and a minus marked on them. We put a minus over here. If you're not sure, just go ahead and hook it up, and the only bad thing that will happen is your motor will turn the wrong way, which is no big deal for right now. So we're going to hook that on there with a washer and a lock washer and finger tighten it down. Take this and hook it to the motor minus, which is the center connection on the all-tracks controller. All right, very good.
Set.
M- from the controller to the motor minus. Now we're going to go from the motor plus to the B+ on the controller.
Here's the plus wire from the motor to the plus of the all-tracks controller. So we'll just go ahead and hook that on there, put our washer, put our lock washer, and finger tighten that bolt down. Now we're going to come over here to the all-tracks controller, put our bolt through there, the washer, and finger tighten that down. Snug that down. Okay.
Good.
Okay, we're going to put in our last high current wire going from the B+ to the solenoid. To do that, we have to remove the bolt again from B+, put them together, and then bolt it back down, and then put it on the solenoid. Notice that there is a high current resistor that is in parallel with this circuit. We have to put that in as well.
Here is the solenoid with the wire hooked onto it that we hooked up over to the fuse. And here is the 250 ohm high power resistor that Woody just mentioned in the circuit. And that's already put across the high current side of the solenoid. So we're going to stick the solenoid back down here in position. All right, that'll hold that in place. Okay, so here's the wire that goes from the solenoid over to the B+. So we're going to hook it onto the solenoid first. And we're going to get the nut that goes on here. Just finger tighten that on there. Bring it underneath these other ones. And here's our B+ terminal that we hooked the battery, hooked the motor onto the controller before. We're just going to undo this one. And then we're going to drop the washer down. That right there. That right there. Going to get our washer. And then just go ahead and tighten that down, Woody. Okay, so that completes the high current part of our wiring, and we'll start next on the low current side.
We're going to go through our low current circuit. We're going to be starting with the fuse position and running a low current wire off into the small fuse, a 5 amp fuse, and then through a 6 amp diode. And then we're going to skip this key switch because you really don't need it. and go on over to the foot throttle or foot switch and make a connection there.
We also have this simpler representation of just the low current side, and from here you can see that the purpose of the low current side is to allow the throttle to communicate to the motor controller, as well as to allow the kill switch to communicate to both the motor controller and the contactor relay.
The first of the low current wires is the wire coming from our fuse right here through the rest of the circuit that Woody just described to you. So we're going to take off the bolt here that we just finger tightened. And we already have this wire made up here. And we'll put these bolts back on. Okay, you can see that the yellow wire comes over here to our low amp fuse. It's a 5 amp slow blow fuse. It goes through the fuse into our diode here. Now on this diode looks a little different than the other ones you might be used to. It's a little bit fatter, it carries a little more current, but there is a white stripe on there that I hope you can see that shows where it corresponds to the line on the schematic that goes away from the 5 amp fuse. So you have the fuse and then the side of the diode without the line, then the side with the line on it comes out and goes out this wire here that we already have in place. It changes color here to this yellow one with a red stripe on it. Comes along the side of the boat and it comes over here. This is our throttle here. Again, if you have one of these Curtis throttles, you can see that it has 3 connections over here. We've labeled them 1 and 2. We're going to ignore the 3rd connector, which is in the middle here, and we're going to take our yellow wire with the red stripe on it and hook it on to our terminal number 3 here. You might also notice that on this connection we're using an insulated little quick connector here. These terminals here are so close together, these little pegs coming out, it is very easy to kind of short these together. So if you can get some of these insulated connectors, that would be great. If not, you can put some heat shrink tubing over a regular non-insulated connector and you'll be fine. Make sure you don't hook this into the middle connector. The middle one isn't used at all there.
Okay, we just finished attaching the wire from the main fuse over to the throttle. Now we're going to take and attach the black wire from the kill switch over to the throttle as well.
Okay, here's our kill switch here with the 4 color-coded wires coming out of it. The first one that we're going to look at here is this black one. So we bring the black one through the hole in the bulkhead here, and it changes into this yellow one. And we're going to stick this yellow wire into the connector here, this label number 1, on the other side of the switch that's on the Curtis throttle controller here.
Okay, you notice the kill switch also has a red wire coming out. That's the power wire, and we'll attach that to the number 1 lead on the number 1 position on the All-Trax controller.
Here's the red wire coming off our kill switch. We're going to route this wire down through underneath these solenoid, underneath these other wires, and we're going to hook this into pin number 1 of our All-Trax controller here. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, very easy. The red one goes into pin number 1. So that's all there is to that.
Okay, we've just connected the red wire from the kill switch to our motor controller, and now we're going to connect the final 2 wires from our kill switch to our contactor or our solenoid. We have a blue and a green wire coming from the kill switch, and the orientation of that blue and green wire is important with respect to the diode. What you'd like to remember is that the green wire is going to go to the same terminal as the line side of the diode.
Alright, here are the blue and the green wires coming from our kill switch, and very easy. Here are 2 terminals of our solenoid. We're just going to hook the green on one side, the blue on the other, like that. And then here is the diode, and I hope you can see on the diode that here is the line that Adrian was talking about that has to be lined up with the green wire. So we're just going to make sure when we put this on the solenoid that the line side goes where the green wire is, and then we hook the other one on the other side. you notice that we hook these little crimp connectors onto the diode. Don't just pull the end of the diode into a loop and stick it on there. Put these crimp connectors. It's a much more reliable connection. And then we'll just tighten these down. Okay.
Okay, we've just connected our blue and green wire from our kill switch to our contactor relay or our solenoid. And now we're going to connect a blue wire from the solenoid to the B minus. It's important that the connection between B minus and the solenoid is to the same port as the blue wire, or the non-line side of the diode.
Okay, now here's the solenoid here that we just hooked the diode onto. We're going to take this nut off here, off the side, away from where the line is.
You can do it. You can do it.
Okay, we're just going to put this wire on the side of the terminal here that is away from where the line is. The line goes that way, and we're hooking it onto this side. That one didn't want to go. Okay, we're going to string this down underneath all of this high current wires. And we're going to stick it down here on the bottom terminal of the Ultrax controller. Okay, it's on there. Adrian, you have the nut. Okay.
You just put it on the B minus terminal.
Good.
Okay, very good.
Okay, we're going to attach the last two throttle wires to the controller. One is colored black and one is colored white. We've already got those wires coming out of the throttle and going back to the controller. We're going to make the connection now.
Okay, here are the two wires that come down from the Curtis throttle controller. They've changed colors here, but we have them labeled here. We have black and white. Black and white. Black goes into 2, white goes into 3. So we're just going to plug them right in here. Again, we have these shielded little crimp connectors here, so these things don't short out against one another. And they plug in right there.
Okay, we've put the high current wiring together. We've put the low current wiring together. We didn't tell you about the meters yet. We'll tell you that later. And we haven't talked about the solar panels. We'll tell you about that later. Right now we're going to tighten down everything and make sure that everything is secure, and then we're going to see if we can start the motor.
Okay, so we've gone through and we've tightened up all of the connections, all the electrical connections. We took the Cole-Hershey AB switch off the bulkhead there. We tightened everything down. We double and we triple checked everything to make sure everything was tight. And the last thing we need to do here then is to hook on this battery, or this cable that connects the two batteries. So we'll stick a washer and another washer and a lock washer and a nut. And we'll do the same on the other side.
Thank you.
Okay, the other thing that we've done is we've cleared the boat of all extraneous hazards, nothing laying around that's going to short anything out or kind of get in the way of the motor. We want to make sure everything's cleared away, which we've done here. And we're going to hook up our kill switch.
This other end hooks onto the driver in case they fall out. It stops the motor.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to put the AB switch into the 1 position.
Clear prop.
Clear back there. Let's try it. So, we've successfully wired the boat.
Have fun.
Another important part of your boat is the sump pump. You've got to be able to extract water if it comes into the boat, which it can come in various different ways. The way you do that is get a separate little battery with its own little circuit going to your sump pump, but you also have to have a float switch so that as the water comes in, the float will rise and then eventually turn on the motor to the sump pump. This team went one extra step. They put on a string here because they didn't even like a little bit of water. They wanted to take out small amounts, and sometimes this float has to come up pretty high before it turns on. So the string that they have, they can pull from the cockpit and turn it on this way by hand as well.